when people look at Donald Trump, and I know a lot of white brothers, when you got conservative white people going, Jiminy Cricket, I have no frigging idea what that guy is. Yeah, you do. He your product. That's your child. That's in the womb of whiteness. Donald Trump is the fleshly thesaurus. And the concrete definition of what black folk been trying to warn America about for 400 years. Now you get a chance to see it. We told you it was narcissistic, it was lethally unintelligent,
it was sexist,
misogynistic, patriarchal. It's against
and
everything
predatory.
that's human.
And greedy and predatory.
And greedy and self-defeating, and will turn on itself, will cut a hole in the ship that all of us are traveling on to satisfy its thirst for revenge and greed. And so, right? I mean, to me, Donald Trump cannot be an exception, because if he's an exception, we can wash our hands. Oh my God, we got rid of him. Lindsey Graham, you were a problem with or without Trump. Mitch McConnell, you were a problem with or without Trump. Because what you do is perpetuate a legacy of inequality, justify it as the normative action of American democracy, only when an exceptional threat like Donald Trump that everybody can see is a problem do you acknowledge finally that white supremacy is a problem, but it is a problem every day in the interstices of American culture, in the invisible spaces, in the inaudible moans and cries of a people who cannot be heard because they will not be amplified by the empathy that now white brothers and sisters have with us, because finally they get the message. If Donald Trump is what y'all been dealing with, my God, this thing has been horrible. It is.
Now, Dyson begins with a direct, passionate address that white Americans who voted Trump have ignored serious voices and warning by the black people. He uses strong language, calling it a scathing critic, setting an uncompromising tone that he will spare no feeling as he confronts this demographic shift. Good people, let's break this down. Dyson frames Trump's support as the emergence of metastasizing whiteness, a potent symbol of racial segregation, far from isolated incidents. He says Trump's rise is rooted in a broader culture of white resentment and backlash against black progress. He emphasizes that black Americans have been sounding very serious alarms for decades now, warning that Americans' racial democracy is fragile and prone to regression. Yet, white voters, fueled by denial and nostalgia, dismiss these warnings and give power to Trump. Dr. Tyson critiques what he calls white innocence, the belief that race doesn't play a role in one's identity. He urges this is a luxury. Whiteness is often invisible to those who hold it, enabling racial bias to operate unchecked. Dyson contends that Trump's presidency weaponized whiteness, steering America towards divisive politics whereby democracy became unsafe for the marginalized communities like black people. He echoed somber warnings about the erosion of democratic norms. He referred to W.E.B. Du Bois' concept. Trump's base receives the psychological wages of whiteness, a sense of superiority in merely not being black, even when tangible benefits were lacking. Finally, Dyson urges white audience to confront their own whiteness, not from guilt, but from responsibility. He insists on intentions, action, acknowledging privilege, engaging in honest racial discourse, and transforming awareness into systemic reforms. Dr. Tyson's message is hard-hitting but hopeful. Recognizing whiteness and its power must be the starting point, not the end. Only then can America transform, safeguarding democracy and giving true meaning to the advice that black communities have been championing all along. Now, let's watch this interview, guys. I'll be back.
Donald Trump ain't the worst of what we've seen. The reason we have hope, because we done see, look, Jim Crow, enslavement, Reconstruction, We done been through a lot worse than this.
Yeah, that's right.
Right? But white brothers and sisters are now finally seeing the tyranny and terror of white supremacy and what it can do to your civilization. Calls on Turkey, Ukraine, right? This is what ignorant, unenlightened, unmolested by enlightenment does to an American culture. White supremacy is bad for white brothers and sisters too.
Yeah.
I think.
This is, I really want to talk to you about your book, Tears We Cannot Stop. But because you just said that, I think we have to talk about the project that I'm currently
Yes,
working on,
got to
which
do
has
it.
taken me in some unexpected places. So 4 years ago now, I was on television on the show on C-SPAN called Washington Journal, which is like a live radio call-in show, and but it's on TV. And halfway through, somebody called in and identified himself as Gary from North Carolina, and his first words were, "I'm a white male, and I am prejudiced."
Right.
Now, this is live television, and the whole shot is a real close-up of my face as I have to react to this.
Right.
You know, I'm on there talking about taxes and jobs and voting rights, you know, and he just says, I'm prejudiced. And he goes on to detail his prejudice and great storytelling about his fear of black men and crime and gangs and drugs. And I'm sort of holding my breath and nodding. And then he says to me, and I will never forget it, he says, "But I want to change and become a better American. And I want to know what your guest can do, to tell me to do."
Yeah, that was a famous moment right there.
So, you know, this moment went viral. I answered him. I finally exhaled, I think. And I said the first thing that came to my mind, which was thank you for admitting what people have such a vested interest in denying,
Yes,
right?
yes.
And then I went on to tell him a few things that he could do to sort of integrate his life, because that's the thing, you know, we make it seem like it's so intractable and impossible and difficult just because it's been here for so long. But it's not that hard to actually look racist beliefs and ideas in the face, identify them, don't suppress them, don't be ashamed that in a society where racism is like the oxygen that we breathe, we are inhaling it, and yes, we exhale it from time to time. Don't be ashamed of it, laugh at it, and put it aside and recommit yourself to the fight to make sure that it doesn't determine the life chances of anybody in our society. That's what we have to do. And so in shorter, simpler words, that's what I said to this Gary from North Carolina on C-SPAN. The moment went viral, but it struck me at that moment more than at any other time that there is a cost of racism to white people too. And I think that actually when we only talk about white privilege, which is real, you can count it, you can weigh it, you can smell it, you can feel it, but it's not the whole story.
Right, right.
Because when we only talk about the way that racism advantages white people and disadvantages people of color, we're actually buying into the same zero-sum paradigm of racial competition that says we are groups that are ineffably separate, and therefore what is good for one group is necessarily bad for the other. And that's not true.
Right.
We are in this society together. We breathe the same air, racked by pollution because of environmental injustice. Excuse me. There's a study that shows that white people who live in segregated cities have more pollution than white people who don't. The people of color in those segregated cities have more pollution than the white people, but the white people have more in a segregated space because that city thinks it can pollute, because it thinks it can only target people of color. It's the air, people. The central metaphor of this book that I'm writing is about when towns across America, not just in the South, drained their public swimming pools rather than let black children swim too. And it feels like that's, in so many ways, what we have been doing since integration across this country. We have pulled back from funding higher education in a way that it used to be basically free when the student population was white. And now that the student population is more diverse, we have cut back on funding and said, you know what, you pay for it. And in fact, keep paying for it for decades and decades, because debt is what we know what to do to Black and brown people. There are so many more examples, and writing this book has taken me to the strangest places, and I know that you experience this too, where you start somewhere and it keeps going, and you're digging and you're digging, and you realize that in fact racism is the organizing principle of our society. Has been from the very beginning. It was the only way to excuse the engine of our economic growth, the kidnapping of millions, the slaughter of millions. And so we have to recognize that this can't just be our problem. And for white Americans, I think it's important to articulate a way in which they have skin in the game and invite the multiracial coalition that has been so elusive, because the plutocrats have always used race to divide us, have always used race to divide white and brown and Black people from one another, even when they have common interests. But I think that multiracial coalition is forming right now in America. It is race conscious, it's not colorblind, and it is going to propel a new social contract. And you know, you wrote your book, your most recent book, as a sermon to white America. You know, in many ways, we're in a conversation with white America.
Yes.
Say a little bit more about why you felt like that needed to be an audience at this moment.
No, what you're saying is so important, and please don't assume that that's the norm. There's a lot of skepticism among Black people. Why are you talking to white folk? Why are you trying to explain stuff to them, right? You remember Malcolm X? Remember Malcolm X in Boston, and he's giving him the what for, and then he travels to New York, and the white girl from Boston is so taken by what Malcolm has said, moved by his words of indictment, relentless and vigorous engagement, and she's like attracted to that. I want to figure out what to do, and so she hunts him down, so to speak, tracks him down in New York and says, "Minister Malcolm, what can I do, a white girl?" And you know the famous answer, nothing.
Nothing.
Right? Now he admitted later it was wrong, but that, and I don't want to indict Black people. That's an understandable thing. My students say, "I ain't came to school." They've said it better than that. You said, "Is that what you're teaching them at Georgetown, really? I ain't came to school?" Really, though? Yes, we know dangling participles, gerunds, and the like, right? But African-American vernacular English articulates deep and profound philosophical sensibilities that are exhausted in the infinite capacity of speaking the King's English to the Queen's taste. So, I ain't came to school to be teaching white folk. I got grades to get. I got stuff to do. I ain't trying to educate folk. So I got up before the class one day, I said, "I feel you. I didn't come to Georgetown to be teaching white." "Oh, yeah, I did, actually." Oh, wait a minute, that's my job. Oh my God. Of course. Is it unfair? Yeah. Is it burdensome? Yes. Would I rather be just Michael Eric Dyson, professor at Georgetown, and not all the students of color and a lot of others who come to me because they saw me on TV or because they need to have a conversation they can have with others? Is that in my paycheck? No, but is it necessary? Yes. Yes. And so it is a burden in that sense, the women dealing with ignominious sexism and patriarchy, having to educate foolish men every day. No extra pay for that. And that's daily, right?
In fact, less pay.
Come on, 70% on the dollar. So the thing is that there is a legitimate and healthy skepticism about, hey, part of the Black Lives Matter and the self-care movement, and I must admit, I'm outside that parameter. You know, and initially I joked about it like, man, Dr. King had to stop in the middle of the March on Washington. I have to go to my psychological therapy. I'll be back on the road after this. That was, you know, it was funny, but it wasn't right, because King could have used some of that therapy. Right, could have used some of that relief. When they opened his body up at 39 years old, they said he had the heart of a 65-year-old man. The pressure was relentless. He was clinically depressed. So I say that to say, I understand the legitimate and healthy skepticism that many black people have about this, and yet the reason I think we cannot help but respond to white brothers and sisters, given what you said about the rising interest in and investment in by white folk of a race-conscious coalition, of trying to do something serious. When folk want to know, you got to answer. When they ask you, you got to tell them. And my book, deliberately, I know there's a movement among many African-American writers, look, and it's wonderful. Toni Morrison said, I write for black people. If y'all listen in, that's good, right? There's something beautiful about that. Because now she doesn't determine her philosophical oeuvre. She doesn't determine what the baseline is for her by looking at a dominant European culture and missing out on the mythopoetry of her own indigenous African base, right? That blackness that resided in Lorain, Ohio. So that's beautiful. I got that too. You can hear it. The gut bucket is in me. Unapologetically. I'm too old to major in anything else right now. This is what I've been. This is what I do. However, it is critical and vital what Ms. McGee has said in terms of trying to explain, right? Lucy, you got some explaining to do? We got to explain, help demystify, demythologize, deconstruct what's going on here. And in that sense, we have to have a conversation that says to white folk, Martin Luther King Jr. said a long time ago, it's killing you. He's in jail in Birmingham. His white jailer comes to him, you know, Dr. King, the warden too. Segregation is right and integration is wrong. What you're doing is wrong. He said, no, it's not. And they argued. And then he finally said, how much money do you make? And when that white jailer told him, King said, hell, you need to be out here marching with us.
That's right.
Because poor white people are not being advantaged by Donald Trump.
That's right.
Isn't that the tragedy? Isn't that the harsh irony? That the very folk who invest in what Du Bois in 1935, read Black Reconstruction, he called it a psychological wage of whiteness. At least I ain't a nigger. That's what they tell them. At least you're not a Negro. We're ripping you off. You ain't got no good money. We're not paying you a fair wage. You are poor, white trash. We got you on the wrong side of the tracks too. We got you in indentured servitude. But at least you're not black. This is what Du Bois in 1935 talked about. So if we can tell white folk in terms, your water system is our water system, right? What's more childish than saying white water fountain, black water fountain? Dude, it's the same water, right? Like it ain't like it's you getting water from Mars. Right? So what's more childish and yet inane and insipid and just dumb to believe that you can somehow segregate natural resources? Now, you can redirect them toward yourself. You can redistribute wealth to yourself. You can keep kids in poor schools, and you can make the society horrible. But even there, to extend what Ms. McGee is talking about, the stuff's gonna come back on you. You think you segregating yourself from poor society. You think you're somehow quarantining your kids, and then your kids are the ones who are the mass murderers. They blowing shit up. We're in a church. Shit them and jet them up. They are destroying the moral infrastructure that you have protected them against. You thought the threat was a Negro. You thought the threat was some black person out there, some Latinx, some person that gets up, you call lazy. They get up at 3 a.m. in the morning. You ain't getting up that early, except if you're trying to look for some more opioids. Those of us making it while we're demonizing those who are on the margin. So yeah, white supremacy and racism destroys the heart of an entire community and country. And it is wrecking us right now. And the investment in so many white brothers and sisters in a guy who doesn't fundamentally care for them. This is not your friend. And the tragedy is, though, right after the election, on, I'll say our side, I'll make it the royal we, choose yourself. But when Bernie Sanders said, see, this is the problem is, yes, I like women and I like blacks, and I wrote the damn bill. But he said, we got to go back. Wait, slow down now. On the left, we have to go back to the universal? To be race transcending? This is a liberal idea. This is an enlightened ideal. Now you want to take us back to what you think is neutral? Whiteness is always seen as objective and therefore neutral. To be neutral in whiteness is to reinforce the status quo, which is white observant. Neutrality is the friend of whiteness. Neutrality is the machinery of whiteness. Objectivity is the infrastructure of whiteness, because whiteness has been rendered invisible and therefore normal and therefore neutral. It is seen as American. The great philosopher Beyonce Knowles said that it has been said that racism is so American that if we challenge racism, it looks as if we are challenging America. So when Miss McGee talks about the price to be paid, not zero sum, because you look at an argument about capitalism. Capitalism has actually helped a whole bunch of people. So it's not we're going to say, oh, capitalism has been altogether bad, that zero sum thinking. No, it's been great. But can you imagine an alternative where many more people could be helped? Yeah, it's been good, but it's been limited. So we ain't going to say either or. Either it's capitalism, socialism, right? We know that many good things have happened, but far better things could happen if we were to embrace a much more open-minded, engaged perspective that allows us to see each other as human. And if we refuse to do that, I think we're sinking American civilization.
That's so right, Michael. And, something you said before about how central hope is to the black politic is just really real for me. I'm going to tell a personal story. So the thing happened in November of 2016. And I was at a watch party with some progressive groups, some grassroots groups, some labor unions here in New York, and I saw things. I saw his face continue to come up on the screen with a check mark next to it, and I just I withdrew. I didn't say goodbye to anybody. I just picked up my bag, and I walked out into the night, and I felt, it was like, I felt an armor just sort of falling in plates all over my body and my mind. It felt heavy. It felt sort of sequential down to my toes. But at the same time, it felt somewhat comforting. And it was, I don't know if you've ever had an explosion happen near you. I hope not. But that ringing in your ears that happens, and the sort of clarity in that moment where you can sort of sense nothing and yet everything. That's what I felt. And what the refrain was that you've been preparing for this your whole life. Your ancestors knew. I used to say in the fight that we are in for a more just world, no matter how hard it gets, my ancestors had to do so much more with so much less. And they knew about this man. And the forces that he is marshaling and leaving in corners across this country for us to clean up for the next generation. But the next day, I woke up and went to work. And at that time, I was running DEMOS, a progressive think tank. That's a multiracial organization, lots of millennials, and many white folks. And we had a breakfast meeting. I said, called everybody in, and I'm still got my armor on, right? I'm still sort of hearing things and seeing things, but not really. I'm just like, boom, 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 and everyone around me who is white is in tears, and I just couldn't muster them. I knew why they were crying. I knew the stakes as well as they did. But I both wasn't surprised, and then I also wasn't as despairing.
Right.
At the exact same time. Right? And it made me think about the centrality of hope to the Black politic. Right? So many of the articles about Elijah Cummings, the Honorable, this week have said, you know, the child of sharecroppers, right? He was the child of sharecroppers, and he really did, but he did not get to live to see it, take down a corrupt president.
That's right.
You know, I'm the descendant of enslaved people on both sides. And so we can't, hope is so central. And I think in many ways, just as our hands have been the engine that have made so much of America's wealth and so much of America's foundations, I think our hope has in many ways been the engine of American political renewal. And I don't want to leave it there, because I think it's worth it for us to think about what is it that we are seeing that is unseen in this moment.
That's powerful.
I think about sometimes my job as someone who's trying to advance over the horizon policy ideas before they're politically possible, as I'm standing in the future and I turn around and say, come on, y'all, it's warm up here, right? This is what it's going to be. I think about a society in the very near future, relatively speaking, where we truly, truly have policies and practices in place that force us into relationship with one another. Because that is, if there is anything to be exceptional about this country, now more than ever, my son's generation is the most diverse generation in American history. There is no racial or ethnic minority in the generation of my son, who is part Black, part Pakistani, part white himself. I see a national service plan where every young person is doing the work to rebuild this country, and not just the hard infrastructure, not just digging ditches and paving roads and planting trees, but also caring the human infrastructure, volunteering in elderly homes and daycares, and doing theater in the parks with children after school. That's just something that every young person does at some point in some other part of the country than where they live. I see that, and I see what it does to those people. And it's not just like the Peace Corps, it's every young person. And they do it with health care, without debt. They do it while they are learning to care for and know one another. That's just one piece of what I see. What do you see, Michael?
No, that's powerful. That's so powerful. That's right. You know, to amplify one of those themes and to reweave one of those threads, you know, I was watching Saturday Night Live after the election, and they had as host Dave Chappelle, and he had on with him Chris Rock. And y'all have seen this. The white folk are just going crazy. Oh my God, it's the worst thing ever, like in history ever. And they look at each other like, yeah, all right. Right? It's like when Obama got off a good one against Trump, when he was like, this, you know, one of his infinitely perishable themes of the worst ever, worst ever. And Obama said, I guess he missed that Black history lesson, huh? When like about slavery, Jim Crow. Guess you missed all that.
Yeah.
And on the one hand, having been through the horror, having endured the trauma, there's a coarsening, you know, there's a kind of callous on the spirit. Some people might think black people are disaffected, can't afford to be emotionally manipulated by every wind that blows, because there's so much pain. And once we began to express it, it might not stop. Number two, we don't have the luxury of cynicism. Right? Cynicism is the luxury of those who got time to think about it. Let me look at my navel because, my God, it's pretty rough out here, right? But when your back is against the wall, you ain't theorizing. Let me contemplate de Tocqueville and the infinite possibilities of democracy's spread through channels and media that permit me, no, you got to like get up and fight. Put the foot in front of the next one. What you said you did the next day. Get up and do the work. Do the impossible in the name of the not yet born. And if black folk have had any key word in our culture, it's next. Right? You take our stuff, we're gonna come up with something else. You rip off the blues, then we got R&B, you took that, then we got hip hop. Please don't take that. So far, so good. You got Eminem, but that's about it. Right? We don't even know that Little Richard and Chuck Berry. Right? What do you think the Beatles got? Woo! That's Little Richard. That's Richard Penniman. We don't know that. We think it's Paul, Ringo, George, and John. Love them. Right? Love them. But even at that level, derivative of an unacknowledged blackness that gave both theme and substance to so much of this culture. The reason we hope is because we know what it can really be and what it was meant to be when white folk ain't messing it up. And so you think that superiority goes to George Washington and Thomas Jefferson and Aaron Burr. But even Hamilton, the musical, should tell you there's always a logic that is outside of the parameters of the normative and the accepted and the status quo that gives deeper meaning and longer vision to something that white brothers and sisters in an imaginative way gave birth to, but that we were the co-authors of as well. When Dr. King said, we ain't going nowhere. We built this joint. Well, I'm gonna build it to leave it, right? And so what I see is a fierce determination of young people to really come to grips with what's going on. But I do not believe in the inevitable progress of younger people. I've seen too much bigotry located in that collective, right? They did I think it was a Pew study of millennials, with the exception of interracial marriage and interracial relationships, they thinking just like they daddies and mamas about race. Spend too much time talking about it. My God, why are they getting those unfair advantages? These are the enlightened ones, right? But it doesn't happen because of generation. It happens because of genre. If you were a jerk 100 years ago, chances are you'll be a jerk 100 years later. That's a species unto itself, jerkdom, right? This is jerkishness, right? I mean, there have been jerks before Donald Trump. I know it's hard. He's so original that you think, my God, he must have invented jerkiness. That's what a genius jerky is, right? Because genius means that you do something that's been done before, but you make people think it's the first time it's been done because of the original way you do it. He has given new meaning to as hollowness. And what's interesting is that here's a guy who stands up every morning to excrete the feces of his moral depravity into a nation he has turned into a psychic commode. Every day. And yet, he will not have the last word.
No.
What Heather McGhee began with when she said soon and very soon, if I can pick up on that gospel's theme, he gonna be gone, right? I don't care how long it is, you gonna be gone sooner rather or later. And what we have to do in the aftermath is piece together this culture and this civilization. But hopefully, many of our white brothers and sisters have learned lessons that you won't forget real fast. Because soon as that is over, you go like, whoo, back to normal. Please not. Please let's not go back to normal, because normal is what produced him.
That's right.
The normal produced the abnormality. Let's not go back to normal. Let's get to health. And health is, let's tell the truth about who we are. As Ms. McGee said earlier, let's grapple with the fact that, as Gore Vidal said, we live in the United States of amnesia. And it's not that, it's amazing to me that when I hear people go, they tell black people or women too, enough of that. Why do you got to keep going back? How many more slave movies do we have to have? Are you joking? How many movies y'all done made that are bad, second rate, third rate, but it was successful, so you start remaking it again, right? How many more times do we have to see the reenactment of the Civil War? How many more books on Jefferson and Lincoln? Love them. I read most of them, try to. But dadgum, 150 a year. How many books on the Founding Fathers, mothers, and brothers? But boy, let a person of color write something, and it's more than oh my God. Do we have to do it? Let it go. You in your Confederate hat and in the shadow of Robert E. Lee and the reenactment of a farcical, comedic grasp of American democratic ethos. No, so let's not let it go. Let's understand what that history is about. And where I see us being is that we are capable. The blessing of Donald Trump, and I hesitate to even use that, but the blessing, the advantage of Donald Trump is that ain't no hiding place down here, right? You remember, went to the Rock to hide my face, rock crowd out, ain't no hiding place. Donald Trump is a Rorschach, a litmus test, and he's a vacuum cleaner, and he's also an exposer of the bullcrap. And for all these people, I was in the room, I didn't make any observations then, I have no observations to make now. You are ridiculous, right? This shows us that whiteness will go to no end, will never spare anything in order to protect it, because the real religion in America is whiteness. The real democracy in America is driven by whiteness. And if we are to overcome it, and I'll end by saying this at this part, look at the backlash against Nicole Hannah-Jones in 1619. You would think America would be like, oh my God, it's more history. It's great. 1619. It's amazing. Now we know 1619 when the first time Negroes came here, right, or were brought here. We know we could do a kind of, seriously aggressive, accurate understanding of history to render it diachronic and synchronic, and there were people here in the 1500s. And so. That ain't the point. The point is 1619 is iconic. Mm-hmm. It's representative of what happened in a major shift, a Gutenberg shift in the culture, reading it differently, the moral dyslexia of America, reading things backward. And the hate that this woman has received for simply helming a project in a culture that, if you look at the New York Times bestseller list, all the time is obsessed with history. If you can control it, if you can manipulate it, if it tells a good story about you, if it's about your folk. And the beauty of what that project is that it forces us to come to grips. She said, ain't no America without us. Ain't no American story without the enslavement. She ain't the first one. Go read Orlando Patterson's Pulitzer Prize-winning book on freedom, where he says we can't even conceive of democracy and freedom, but especially freedom without the enslaved. It is the contradistinction that works itself out. So the 1619 Project reminds us that we say we want to learn history, we don't. We want to learn a story that can help us weave our history as magnificent. But real history, engaging the facts on the ground, means that we're willing to tell the truth about both our complicity with inequity and evil and our refusal any longer to go along with it. When Donald Trump is gone, let's also hope that what will be gone is our refusal to deal with the truth, the amnesia that we have collected to ourselves. And I'll say this, Donald Trump is right about stuff just at the wrong time, right? He talks about the fake news. Now, first of all, he's tripping because he is the perpetuator of fake news and the perpetrator.
But Michael, that's how he does it, though. That's why it's whiteness, right? Everything that he's ever done, he has accused somebody else of doing.
And
is that not one of the core ways that whiteness, and I'm not talking about white people, I'm talking about whiteness as the ideological identity construct.
Right.
One of the core features is projection. And of course, how could it not be, right? How can you create a goodness for yourself when you are those who have kidnapped and raped and murdered and separated families and stolen, and yet black people are the criminals?
Let's see, and that's just very quickly, that's so brilliant. I mean, more brilliant than the point I was about to make, but let me just, what I was going to say, no, it was powerful, but what I was going to say this, but it leads, if it bleeds, it leads. The media that is now on its haunches and mad at Donald Trump also savaged black people and women. This same media is now so arrogant. Oh my God, how dare he? You're the same media that misrepresents black people. You put us on TV and hair curls. You go to the wrong, you go to the hood, right? And then you isolate people, and then you try to reinforce our ignorance. Yes, there is fake news, just not the one Donald Trump is talking about. But the fake news of white supremacy did not begin with the media getting on its haunches about Donald Trump. It has been complicit, and the news media has been wrong. The FBI? Don't you know one of the most tragic consequences of Donald Trump's presidency is to force black people to defend the FBI? I mean, it's hard, dog. It's hard. It's like, we're going like, James Comey is a hero. Oh my God! Robert Mueller is, okay, he's whack. But the same FBI, Donald Trump is right about the FBI, just not about this era.
Right.
Martin Luther King Jr. was endangered in his life, and the FBI refused to tell him where the threats were coming. The FBI was complicit with local sheriffs to hurt and harm black people. Everything Donald Trump is saying is right, except it's about black people as victims of the white supremacy he perpetuates. So everything, the fake news, the FBI, and the and talking about what the manipulation of American history does to marginalize people. Everything he's saying is true, but it ain't true about him, and therefore the lie is even more vicious. So you're absolutely right. Whiteness as a construct, whiteness as an ontological assertion, whiteness as something of a template that we have has to be unmasked, has to be deconstructed. And when we do that, it relieves the burden of white people. Lying to yourself about being superior when you know it ain't true. You ain't got to carry that burden no more. Right? Don't have to believe that you have to run the world anymore and therefore ruin the world, because those who run it ruin it. And I think in this case, if we can give up some of that arrogance in exchange for our humanity in return, I think it would be incredible. So I think your book, The Air We Breathe, that could be a good title. Right? The Air We Breathe.
I did tell him I was looking for a title.
Right. The Air We Breathe. I'm trying to give it, I think that could work right now. The Air We Breathe, because we all breathing together. This water we drink. But I like the air we breathe, because it's polluted and it's environmental. Right?
We're working on it. Let's have some questions.
All right.
So will people come up to the mic here? If you have questions, please come up to the mic. While people are coming up to the mic, Micah, will you talk about, just really briefly, the name of your book and then the book that's coming out next?
Okay,
right?
yeah. The name of my book is Tears We Cannot Stop, A Sermon to White America. The one after that is called What Truth Sounds Like, Robert F. Kennedy, James Baldwin, and Our Unfinished Conversation on Race. And I got a book coming out in November called Jay-Z Made in America. Right? Please buy that book. I'm just saying, I got kids to feed. Please help me out. Right? All the white brothers in here and sisters, buy 10 copies apiece and give them to your neighbors. I'll sign them all.
Yes, thank you.
I'll be pre-ordering that.
Thank you so much.
Is her mic on? Okay,
There it
good.
is,
All right,
okay.
Kelly, great.
You guys spoke a lot about, I guess, past as regarding reparations and kind of Jim Crow. What about the war on drugs regarding blacks and Latinas? That's a big issue right now with a lot of men and women in jail.
So that's one of the, thank you for your question. So that's one of the things that frustrates me the most about the conversation about reparations is that when we talk about it only as slavery, we are missing an opportunity to truly do the accounting and to tell the whole truth. Frankly, I would be fine if it didn't have anything to do with slavery. If it just had to do with redlining and the theft of black land and the war on drugs and the health inequalities and the pollution, if it just had to do with things that happened in Michael's lifetime, I would be fine with that. I think that one of the exciting ways to make amends for the unjust, inhumane, and ultimately self-defeating, as we now see it coming home to roost as joblessness and despair has moved to rural white communities in the forms of opioids. One of the ways to deal with the war on drugs, which was the war on people using and selling drugs, would be to make sure that at this moment, when the money is again flowing, when capitalism has again found a way to make profit, that the commercialization of marijuana and CBD and all of that, right? A hundreds of billions of dollar industry, even in the places where marijuana is not yet legal for recreational use, that there are reparations built into that. That people who were innovating selling these drugs should be the ones to be able to hang a shingle and open up a storefront. Thank you very much. I'll leave it at that.
Amen.
Got a line now. Thank you.
Amen. Amen.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Thank you so much. Ms. McGee and Reverend Dyson, this is a gift that my father is not able to be here tonight because it's my mom's birthday. And my dad is now retired but was a successful producer. But before he became a producer, he wanted to be a photographer. And he took photographs of Dr. King and Bayard Rustin. And he's putting together his photo collection, and it's called the Civil Rights Movement. And I'd like to give this to you.
Oh my
Thank you, man.
Wait, I'm sorry, hold on, wait. Please say your name and your father's name.
Okay, my name's Bernadette Drayton, and my father's name is Bernard Drayton, and I come from a family of musicians and so.
Of Black excellence, that's what you come from.
Is that package open, or can you show the people the picture right quick or not? Yeah, let's show it to them right
Wow. Here, that's
quick. We both got one? What's up?
rock, paper, scissors. Oh
Right,
my
right.
goodness.
I'm going to preach at Dr. King's church on Sunday. Wow. That's amazing.
And this is by
Right. Let me add a Dr. King.
Okay, all right.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. I got to preach at Ebenezer, Dr. King's church on Sunday. So I want to take the king.
Yep.
You know?
Yes, please.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
You can say I am.
Just go closer to the mic, sister.
Good
Thank
evening,
you.
everyone. Could you guys hear me now?
No, just speak a little bit back. There you go.
Loud enough.
Yeah.
Thank you. I am one of the millennials. I have a question to ask you guys. How do we hold white folks accountable for the N-word when we ourselves make that word, well, we embrace that word? How do we hold them accountable for it?
It's time for me to go.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Damn. Almost escapes. I love you, millennials. Yeah. You know, I refuse to infantilize white people. White people are grown. You know the difference between being in and out. I'm around women all day long, right? They be going like, did you see this be, what this be, right? And they are feminists and self-actualized, but they're in a playful space. And they go, now if I were to go, no, I want to live, I don't want to die. So that ain't my word. I can't do it, right? I ain't doing it, dog. Gay people take the worst things you can imagine that have been said about gay people, and they call themselves youth. I can't believe, right? That's their privilege and their choice. When it comes to the N-word, it's even more problematic because it's been made so public, and because black people have been more dominant than any other minority group to deploy a term once seen as unmitigated offense. I just happen to believe there's a difference, me, between white people saying nigger and black people saying nigga, right? That's just me, let me say, right? So I don't want white people to be confused, so let me give a general rule. Here's the instances, white people, when you can say the word nigger. Never. Right, got it? I'm just trying to figure it out. Got it? Everybody got it? Like never. Like never, 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 right? But black people, and I'm not going to be one of these to say it's only about a term of affection. It's not.
Right.
Sometimes it's meant just as hatefully as what white people mean when they say nigger, right? So having said that, the first time I heard the word nigger wasn't from rappers. I'm 60 years old. The preachers of churches, I preach to these niggas today, right? I shouldn't be telling this to white folk, but they're here. So what's interesting to me is that internal discourse and dialogue before technology then reproduces rapidly the possibility on a $15 CD to make it for the world, so that people in Japan are saying, what's up, my nigga, and have no idea about the historical context, which can be deeply and profoundly problematic. And I understand that. Having said that, how could I ever say that I can't hold white folk accountable for saying nigger if I continue to say nigga, when the reason I say nigga is to snatch the possibility of rhetorical supremacy from a white supremacist logic articulated by white people. I can't concede liturgically, etymologically, or even semantically their own project to be able to do that. So my word is nigga, please. Right? So, and look, I understand why it's embarrassing. I understand that, my God, we have to be conscious of context and clues and so on and so forth, but white people are grown enough. They can land a man on the moon, or today, two women, right? That's right, we did that, right? Two women walking together in space, because they're trying to get rid of these damn men, and they're trying to find a place where they can be free, right? So,
Moon of one's own.
So
we should hear more questions.
So my point is, I just think it's a lot more complicated than that. I hope you forgive me. Don't cancel me from your generation, because that's what y'all do real well. And I got a problem with cancel culture. Forget nigga, I got a problem with cancel culture. All right, but.
And also, I completely agree with what Michael said, and I don't say it. I just don't say it also. Yeah.
I've said it enough for her and a whole bunch of other black people.
Yes, sir.
First of all, I think I'm speaking for everyone. We've been thrilled to have you here in Brooklyn, both Ms. McGee and Professor Dyson. And you've taught us a lot this evening, taught me personally and my wife, and we're really grateful. Okay, my question.
Here it is.
No, but I'm a recently retired New York City high school teacher, mostly at Brooklyn
Thank you for your
Tech
service. Thank you for your service.
Yeah, right, no doubt.
And we're living through a Jim Crow in the New York City public school system, in the specialized high schools in particular. When I first started, 25% of the population of Brooklyn Tech was black, and another 15% Latino. And I think it's down to, Brooklyn Tech's the best school of the specialized schools. I think it's down to I don't know what the figures are, but it's 9% or 7%. And you've seen what's going on in Stuyvesant, where there's literally 6 black students in the whole school, the best school in New York City. It's the Jim Crow of New York City. It's a kind of redemption of white privilege in New York City. It's going backwards. We have a mayor who's interested in changing it, and we have some sympathetic parties, but nothing's been changed.
Yeah.
Nothing has been changed.
Yeah.
What could you
Yeah.
say to this?
So this is one of the things that I find so frustrating. It is a frustrating byproduct of inequality, is I think the nicest way to put it, is this new obsession with creating these gates around some of the most effective education, right? Because remember, it's supposed to, when you're 16 years old and you test into a school, it shouldn't be that it's saying, okay, great, you're done, congratulations on your achievement. School is for learning. So my utopian vision is that the quote unquote best schools with the best educators go to the students who have actually performed the worst because they need the most to learn. Why are we acting like it's like a cherry on the top of a life well lived to get into a school when you're a teenager? I don't understand it. But anyway, I mean, I understand it. There is this, and I'm thinking of this in the most generous way, because there are so many parents who feel terrified for the fate of their children if they make one false step, if they don't always get the best thing.
Right.
That said, what we have done is we have created this lie of meritocracy. And we have done that to morally excuse ourselves from completely recreating the systems that existed over 50 years ago when those schools wouldn't even let Jewish people in, right? We have to let it go. And every time, and either we believe that the spark of human genius lives in every child,
Right.
and that if some child is not well educated, then they need more and better education. Or we simply believe that the test scores are telling us that white people are better than everybody else. I think those are the two options. And so we have to let it go. And most importantly, those children at Stuyvesant and Brooklyn Tech who are not living in going to school every day in the diversity of this city are receiving an inferior education because of it. You cannot educate a child well for this city in a segregated space. That's all. Thank
you. Good evening.
Good evening.
Welcome to Brooklyn.
Thank you.
I wanted to ask you, I am a Generation Xer.
Okay.
We hear a lot about millennials. We have compassion for and we understand. But Generation X, from the figures, is a generation of primarily women, minorities, college educated, and women inclusive of white women, but minority women at a higher rate of college education than any other group generationally so far. Yet it is a generation that seems to go unheard of by politicians. None of the needs of Generation X are addressed.
What's the age range of Generation X?
Generation X, I think the latest Generation X is probably 38 to now 52. So you have the older end that probably will never retire, but will reach retirement age at some point, and the younger end that are caught in not being able to do anything, not being able to buy a house, they have all the issues of the millennials.
Right.
And yet, it goes completely off the political agenda.
Yeah.
No one discusses Generation X. It's almost like it's a generation that's erased. CBS just did a poll. They left out Generation X. And I was watching the local news here, Dana Tyler on Channel 2. She says, what, don't we matter? She's a woman of color, and her anchor person next to her is also. And you could almost see the dumbfoundedness on them, like you just left out a whole generation. And I want to know your thinking on that, because Generation X, kids now, the ones who did have kids or helped raise kids, right? Many of Generation X were in crack communities. They raised babies. They raised siblings, babies. They saw the whole criminalization. And yet here Generation Z
saying set to change the world, and now we're going to inherit the debt of millennials
Right.
and so forth.
Right.
So why
That's
is
a good
this
question.
not addressed?
Thank you. Yeah.
I have a two-pronged question because that's what Generation X does.
All right. Okay. But will you do this one more briefly, please? Because I'm getting the high sign about the time.
All right.
Okay.
Sorry.
It's okay. No, don't
That was
apologize.
question number
Okay.
one.
Okay.
Question number two is, I wonder about the activism for the pioneering activists. Why is it that we have these great things, Tyler Perry, Jay-Z, et cetera, yet we know that many pioneering activists in our history were destitute. Rosa Parks couldn't pay her rent. And why don't we focus on things like that?
I'll take the
Thank you.
second.
Okay.
Person.
All right. Thank you for your questions and for coming out tonight, everyone. Thank you for coming out tonight. One of my former colleagues is here tonight, Tamara Drought. She wrote a book in 2007, perhaps, called Strapped: Why America's 20 and 30-somethings Can't Get Ahead. She is a proud Gen Xer, and the book was really about people in their 20s and 30s a decade plus ago, and so they really were Gen Xers. That book laid out the fact that the inequality era, right? All the policy decisions that were made starting in the late 70s, really accelerating under the Reagan era, trade, jobs, the gutting of the social safety net, the unwillingness to update our policy for the way that, families really live now. Women are working more, and so why don't we have any kind of paid family leave or child care, the bottoming out of the minimum wage, the lack of a return on a college degree, the growth in student debt. All of that has really come home to roost for 20, 30, and now 40-year-olds. There's a lot of generational beef in this country right now, right? I mean, you've got septuagenarians in control. There are many septuagenarians who are not just in the White House, but, all over the wheels of power. And you've got young people who are, whether young is 40, 30, 20, or 10, are saying, what are you doing? What are you doing? I think it comes back to this lack of care about the human fabric that connects us. The ability to isolate, to think I only actually care about my own family, my own children, and not other people's children. That is a value that was created to support an economic system and a racial hierarchy, and we don't need it anymore. We don't want it anymore. It's not serving us. And so it's really important for us to see that in so many ways we are, as we've been discussing, we are sicker than we often admit. And the way we do not think 7 generations ahead, or even of the generations that are currently alive, it's just one symptom of that.
No, amen. And as to the second part of the Gen X question, look, I think you're absolutely right. We should pay attention to and homage to those who came before. Just bottom line, I've written a book on Malcolm X. I've written 2 books on Dr. King, Marvin Gaye. So I appreciate, right, the earlier, if you will, generation's commitment to our progress. When we talk about the greatest generation in this country, we're talking about World War II veterans and so on. Think about the veterans of progress, the veterans of freedom struggles. Right? The men whose bladders are destroyed because when they were leaving the South, North, and going South and couldn't stop, right? My daddy, Georgia, Mama, Alabama, we had a mason jar under the seat that we relieved ourselves in, right? And a sandwich in a brown paper bag from Detroit going down to Alabama and Georgia. Those women, gray-haired soldiers, sisters who put up with so much hate and disrespect as a Rosa Parks. And I had a chance to meet Rosa Parks, and at the dedication of the Rosa Parks Street in Chicago. It was Emmett Till, I'm sorry. But she was there, and to celebrate her genius was extraordinary. So I do think that we have to have an appreciation for those who came before. And even mentioning Jay and so on, you know, I had a conversation with my latest book with Harry Belafonte, you know, who is still here, still a lion, still doing his thing. But we certainly, I mean, without them, where would we be, right? If there were no Harry Belafonte, there wouldn't be a DaBaby or Future. My God. Okay. Names you don't even write. You're going, huh? What? Hey, what? There wouldn't be a present generation that would be able to reap enormous benefit and therefore need to be conscious of where they came from in order to make that contribution back to those communities to sustain them. So I agree with you wholeheartedly on that. All right.
Sorry.
Thank you.
Now, welcome back, guys, and let's break it down. America's political divide is more than red versus black. It is cultural, racial, economic, and deeply rooted in identity. And in recent years, especially in the year 2016 and 2022, many white voters across the United States aligned themselves with Donald Trump, even as Democratic figures like Kamala Harris sought to represent a more inclusive and progressive vision. But why do you think this one happens? And what exactly do you think explains this divide? And why did so many white voters turn away from Kamala Harris, Democratic figure? One reason is what political scientists call status threat. Many white Americans, especially in rural, working class, and older demographics, have felt that their place in society is slipping. They have seen cultural norms shifting, heard talks of white privilege, and watched as the country becomes more racially diverse. For some, Trump symbolizes a way to push back against the change. He spoke the language of grievance and nostalgia. Make America great again, which resonates with those who felt overlooked by modern liberal politics. By contrast, Kamala Harris, a black and South Asian woman, often became a symbolic target for this fear. Her identity represented the very future many Trump voters felt anxious about. Many white Trump voters have a deep contrast of Washington, D.C., and they associate leaders like Harris with what they see as the political establishment. Even though Harris is the daughter of the immigrants and rose through California's justice systems, her polished image, Senate career, and association with the liberal coastal elites made her a lightning rod for conservative criticism. Now, let's be honest here. Race and gender played a major role. Kamala Harris faced criticism that white male politicians simply did not. Her tone was labeled as abrasive. When she challenged opponents, her ambition was called threatening. Her mixed race heritage was questioned. For some voters, consciously or not, her identity made her very harder to be trusted. Meanwhile, Trump's aggressive style and inflammatory rhetoric were often excused as authentic or tough. This reflects a racial and gender double standard that still shapes American politics. And another major factor was the media landscape. Right-wing outlets portrayed Harris as extreme far left or even anti-American. False rumors about her background and political spread quickly online. Trump capitalized on this, feeding distrust in mainstream media and framing himself as a warrior against the lies of liberal elites. Many voters bought into the narrative and saw Harris, despite her actual policy position, as part of a radical agenda. Guys, let's not forget Trump's policies and promises during his campaign. Trump promised tax cuts, a strong stance on immigration and deregulation, things that appealed to many white voters especially in business and in rural communities, including Latinos. Kamala Harris' position on policing, climate justice, healthcare, and social equity, though often moderate, were branded as far left by the GOP. Whether accurate or not, that perception stuck with many center-right white voters. As its core, many Trump voters feared rapid change, demographic and cultural political. Kamala Harris represented the future, a multiracial, a progressive global America. Trump represented the past, a familiar and simpler vision of national identity. And for many white voters, the past felt safer. Now, guys, leave me your thoughts in the comment section and tell me what you think. Thanks so much, and let's meet again in my next video. And this is AfriVlog.